Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ange if you haven't met me before, and today I thought we would do a video on node propagation, or more commonly known in the plant community as wet stick propagation. If you can hear chewing in the background, again, that is Cash right over there, and I do not want to bother him, otherwise he will start barking, so I'm so sorry about that. All right, so I thought I would start off today's video with exactly what is node propagation, and I brought my handy dandy model, the Satin pothos, or Syndapsis pictus, to properly show you what is a node in case you are not familiar with it. So as you can see, looking at most plants, you have a stem, and everywhere that a leaf pops out of at that stem is called a node. And in between those two nodes is called an internodal spacing. So I'll show you a little bit closer. You can see that every node, there are these aerial roots that are popping out. And if you were to cut a plant at the internodal spacing between the nodes, you can start off a whole new plant. So when people say normally a wet stick propagation, that is normally when there is no leaf attached to that node, but you can still propagate the plant and create a whole new plant from that node. And you can see that at the end of the stem here, if I cut the stem just here, then I would have one node to propagate from. Another thing on the node that you might see is something called an auxiliary bud, and I don't see one clearly here. It'll be like a little green nub. It's essentially like a dormant growth point that the plant can spurt growth out of when it is activated. But I don't find that every single node you can physically see an auxiliary bud, but there is just a greater chance of propagation success when you do have one. Another thing we should chat about when we're talking about node propagation is the term spent nodes. And what this means is that every node on a plant can produce one growth point from that node. And if that growth point is used up, or it dies, or something happens to it, it cannot create another growth point. So in the words of Eminem, you have one shot, one opportunity to create a plant from that node. So a lot of people online have been scammed. I have seen where people are selling a spent node, especially of like Monstera aloe, and then you cannot create a plant from it. So essentially it's just a waste of money. So be careful with your node propagations. Make sure if you are buying something more pricey online that you can see an auxiliary bud, that little bump, because that is going to guarantee that that node hasn't been used up before. So I will be honest, node propagation for me without any leaves attached to the plant is not the most reliable form of propagation, I find. I find that the plants have a greater chance of propagation success when they have a leaf to it, because I think it just helps that plant create energy for it. But that being said, I have had quite a bit of success just rooting wet sticks, and I am going to show you how I do propagate those plants. So this is my little propagation box, or I like to call it like my mini greenhouse. And I purchased this from Bunnings, my local hardware store, for I think like $10, which I thought was a really good price. It does have two little air holes that you can open and close on the top, but I find keeping your node propagations in a really humid, bright environment gives them the best chance of success. So I'm going to flip you around just so you can see inside the box. Alright guys, so this is inside my little mini greenhouse. And if it looks a little bit wet in here, it is because I just watered it yesterday, and obviously it hasn't had time to fully dry up yet. But what I have is about an inch or so of sphagnum moss on the bottom of the greenhouse, and then I lay my node propagations on top of that. You can use whatever medium you like when you are doing node propagation. Like you can use soil, perlite, moss, whatever you like. I have personally found the most success with moss. When I have used straight soil, I do find that my cuttings did completely rot off, and perhaps that was my error in not keeping it moist enough, or not keeping it, dry enough. I just need to do a little bit more experimentation with that. But as you can see, I have had some really nice success here. So I thought that I would show you what you can get from just a wet stick after a little bit of time and patience. So just in this section here, I have some philodendron pink princess node propagations. And what I did was I took a top cutting from my mum's plant, and it had a really long leggy bit of stem without any leaves on it. So I just chopped those up into single nodes, rooted them up into this, and now we have little mini plants. We do have quite a substantial root system in there. You can see that when I'm tugging, it kind of is stuck, and these are some of the roots that are kind of spreading out everywhere. These are actually ready to go into soil and become their own plants, but I wanted to show you guys the end product before separating them out. So you can see that this little area, this thickened bit of stem here, was where I took that node propagation. And we have all of these new leaves. I have another one here. This is probably my largest one. This little section of stem here is probably my favorite. So you can see that this little area has so much pink on it. It is absolutely beautiful. And then this side is a little bit more green. So when you are doing your node propagations, I find that the easiest way is to just lay the node straight across sphagnum moss and then just tuck it in whilst still leaving it a little bit exposed, so it is not completely covered. And if there is an auxiliary bud, try to keep that on the top of the sphagnum moss, like not facing down, so the plant can actually grow up from there. But these guys have been in here for, I would say, about 3 months or so. This root system is not as large as the other one. I find that this one had more pink on it, so it was definitely a lot slower growing than the ones with more green. But they are so cute, and we would definitely say this is a nice success story. Next to that, I have this little baby philodendron mame. So what happened with this one is I got a fully rooted plant from Foliage Freak a couple months ago, and just a little bit of stem, so this little area of stem had broken off the main plant. So I literally didn't know if they were spent nodes or anything, so I just chucked it in here, and now we have 2 growth points and a little baby philodendron mame. Look how cute that is. And we are starting to get that nice silvery variegation to the leaves, and at some point I will just be sticking this in with the other plant and having a nice bushy little guy. These 2 here, I would say, are not as much of a success story. They have been propagating for such a long time, and these 2 are my philodendron gloriosum. And I do have another proper philodendron gloriosum plant that I will show you later, but these guys I just did as node propagations, and I will got to say philodendron gloriosum is stubborn. I don't know if it's just me, but they really don't want to root up properly. So we can see here, this is a little bit of stolen from philodendron gloriosum. We have got some little, oops, let that focus, tiny leaves growing out from over here. But no root growth as of yet. So yeah, I'm not sure. I'm just leaving this in there. I'm not really expecting anything to come from this, but you know, it can do its thing until I get bored and maybe chuck it out. And then the other bit is this section here where we are getting a little bit of growth. A lot of this is spent nodes, so I'm not gonna imagine it's gonna do anything anytime soon. So I could cut it back if I wanted to, but you know, I'm a bit lazy. But that is what I have in my propagation box at the moment. This normally lives outside on my balcony, and I would recommend, if you are using a propagation box, that you give it enough light. So I would definitely recommend getting bright indirect light. This one even gets a little bit of direct light on the box, and it is totally fine. And another thing I like to do is when I see the lid of the box getting like really wet with condensation, I like to open it up for a few hours and let some fresh air in. I really think that that helps to minimize the chance of rot. I just wanted to quickly show you my other philodendron gloriosum that lives inside my Mars Hydro grow tent, and it is something that I have propagated recently, about 2 weeks ago. So I'll pull it out here so we can have a little look. So you can see here that is 2 stems, and about 2 weeks ago it was one really long stem, but this section here actually had no leaves on it, so I thought I would just chop it. So I just took a knife, I cut it right here, and it was already rooted, so I just adjusted it in the pot and left it rooted up, and it has since put out a new leaf and 2 other growth points. So that is an option that you can do if you have a really leggy plant, is just cutting off a section will activate those dormant growth points and it will put out some new leaves. So I'm so happy with that. We have a little baby gloriosum on the way. Alright guys, so that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, then please hit the thumbs up. And if you haven't already, then hit subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Alright, bye.